I swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Ooh.
All right. Now that the witness has been sworn, let me just inquire, have you been observing any of the trial testimony that's taken place in this case?
No, I have not.
Have you talked to anyone else about any testimony they've given?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to inquire, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, will you please state your full name and spell it for the record?
My name is David Sincerbeaux, spelled Sincerbeaux.
And are you currently working?
I am retired from the Idaho State Police,
Okay. And when did you retire?
February of last year.
What did you do for the Idaho State Police?
I was a forensic chemist, primarily did controlled substances, but also did fire debris cases,
How long did you do that work?
for 26 years.
Prior to doing that for the state police, where did you work, if anywhere?
I worked as a environmental chemist down in California for 10 years with two different organizations.
And how many years did you spend working for those two organizations?
About 10 years.
What did you do for them?
With the exception of what I was analyzing for, I was basically analyzing for gasoline and some pesticides.
And can you, let's go back to your work for the Idaho State Police. What types of cases did you become involved with where you would analyze accelerants?
Suspected arson cases is the simplest thing.
Could you just describe a typical case that would come in for that kind of analysis and what you would do to analyze?
Typically, the evidence would come in a friction lid can, basically a paint can. It could come in a couple different ways. Occasionally we would, but primarily would be in these cans. They would come in, they would contain, lack of a better word, fire debris, basically burnt stuff. Sometimes soil, sometimes building materials, just kind of a variety, sometimes clothing. And then we would do our analysis on it and determine whether or not it contained a ignitable liquid.
What would the analysis process be in that situation?
What we would do is once we received the can, basically the analyst, we would look at it, check to make sure it was in a sealed condition. We would open it up, make a quick observation of what was actually in the inside. We would check to see if there was any significant odor of a ignitable liquid, basically gasoline, paint thinner, something like that. We would then put into the can a charcoal strip and basically suspend that up above the material. Reseal the can, make sure that it's all sealed tight. We would put it in the oven for about 4 hours at roughly 70 degrees centigrade. Heat it up for that 4 hours. Once it was done, we'd take it out, let it cool down to room temperature. We would then reopen that can, take out the charcoal strip, put it in a little vial, add some solvent to it, and then we would run that solvent on an instrument called a GCMS. And the GCMS would tell us primarily whether or not there was a ignitable liquid in it. Ignitable liquid. And then from there, we would compare that to a known standard, and that's how we would make our identification.
Could you briefly explain to the jury how the GCMS works?
Sure. The GCMS is a two-part instrument. The first part's a GC. It's called a gas chromatograph. And what it is a temperature-controlled oven that has a special column on the inside of it. The solvent that contains our unknown will basically be volatilized. The gas has been sent through that column, and that column will separate out organic molecules primarily by molecular weight, i.e. the small lightweight ones go through faster, the heavier ones take more time. Once the separation has been done, it goes to the mass spectrometer, which is the MS. And that will basically, as the compounds come out, it bombards it with a set of electrons. The electrons will then blow that compound apart. It collects then all of the fragments. The fragments are indicative of what the compound was. And what we do, if we were actually to identify a specific compound, is we take the retention time, how long it took to come out of the column, and what its fragmentation pattern looked like. For fire debris, we don't do that very often. We tend to look at the overall pattern, and then we look at classes of compounds that are petroleum-based. So basically, and that's what our ignitable liquids can be.
Thank you. And I believe I overlooked asking, but explain to the jury your educational background.
Sure. I have a bachelor's of science degree in chemistry. I've been an analytical chemist since 1985.
If you reflect back over the years of your work for either the state police or your prior employers, approximately how many cases do you think you've been involved with where you've had to try to identify from fire debris what the accelerant was?
Cases probably between 50 and 100, probably closer to the 50 end.
And do you recall working on a case involving Tylee Ryan?
Yes, I do.
Is that something that came in 2020 to your agency?
Yes, it did.
And what was referred to you in that case?
There was a friction lid can that came in.
Okay. And do you remember who the referring agency was?
I do not off the top of my head.
Do you recall if it was law enforcement?
Yes, it was.
Do you recall what you were being asked to evaluate from the referring agency?
They had a request for looking for the presence of an ignitable liquid.
What did they specifically send you that they asked you to evaluate?
What was on the inside of the can?
Yes, sir.
The inside of the can contained some decomposing flesh and some basically debris. There's some other like dirt and sticks and stuff like that.
Okay. And what, in fact, did you do with the material they sent you?
Like I talked about, I identified kind of what it looked like. I then put it in a charcoal strip, put it in the oven for 4 hours, and then took out the strip, analyzed it with my GCMS, and came up with a conclusion.
Did you determine what things were inside of the can specifically?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
It contained gasoline, and it also contained what appeared to be some compounds that are indicative of decomposing flesh.
So the material inside of the can had decomposing flesh?
Yes, it did.
And you determined through your analysis that it also had gasoline?
That is correct.
Do you recall if there was anything else in the container that you received in addition to the flesh?
There was some debris and some soil.
So when you did your analysis, was it possible or is it possible to determine where the gas vapor was coming from the debris versus the flesh?
No, there's not. It's just there was gasoline in that can.
And just the last couple of questions. When you perform this analysis and you put the charcoal strip inside the can, and then you said you heat it, correct?
That is correct.
Is there any way to determine what items, from items that are inside the can, to determine where the vapor is generating from?
No, it's just somewhere in there, it had gasoline vapors.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I have no more questions.
All right. Cross-examination.
No, no questions.
All right. Well, Mr. Sincerbeaux, that will conclude your testimony this morning then. Thank you for appearing.